July 1974. Athens, Greece. The Aegean sun glints off the waves of the Saronic Gulf as a man approaches the bustling port of Piraeus. He carries a modest suitcase, his travel documents identifying him as a Lebanese businessman bound for Cyprus. He believes he is merely another anonymous traveler blending into the crowd. But his name, Mahmoud Hamshari, is already a red mark in the deepest corners of Tel Aviv's intelligence archives. Every calculated step, every momentary pause is meticulously logged by unseen eyes that have journeyed across continents, waiting for this precise moment. This is Black Protocol, and today we unravel a chapter from a shadow war, fought not with tanks and fighter jets, but with whispers and surgical precision. A conflict where the rules were unwritten and the stakes were nothing less than the future of a nation's security, played out on the unsuspecting streets of Europe. It's a story where expertise became a weapon, and anonymity a fleeting luxury. Before we delve into the heart of this covert operation, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching us from? To understand the relentless forces at play, we must journey back to the very origins of this escalating conflict. In the shadowed corridors of July 1974, as Mahmoud Hamshari prepared for his seemingly innocuous journey from Athens, the red mark against his name in Tel Aviv was not merely an administrative note, it was a declaration of intent, a direct consequence of a calculated threat he represented to the State of Israel. Hamshari, a 42-year-old Palestinian engineer, had risen through the ranks of the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, to become an indispensable asset in their clandestine war. His specialty was not in frontline combat, but in the darker, more intricate arts of warfare, the design and construction of sophisticated explosive devices. Hamshari possessed an uncommon genius for turning technical knowledge into instruments of destruction. His educational background in engineering, likely acquired through studies in Europe or the Middle East, provided him with a profound understanding of physics and chemistry, which he meticulously applied to nefarious ends. His expertise extended far beyond conventional bomb-making, delving into the development of innovative detonation mechanisms that were exceedingly difficult to detect and even harder to disarm. These were not crude, simple devices. Hamshari specialized in crafting intricate triggers, pressure-sensitive switches concealed within everyday objects, barometric mechanisms designed to activate at specific altitudes, or advanced timing devices capable of precise, delayed detonations. This level of sophistication allowed PLO operatives to deploy bombs with greater stealth and effectiveness, increasing their impact and minimizing the risk of premature discovery. These devices were increasingly deployed in audacious attacks against Israeli targets across Europe and the Middle East, striking at the very perception of Israeli security and global reach. More critically, Hamshari's value to the PLO was magnified by his capacity to train others. He was not just a lone wolf technician. He established clandestine workshops and instructional sessions where he imparted his specialized knowledge to new recruits. These training programs ensured that his expertise was not confined to a single individual, but was replicated across the organization, creating a growing pool of skilled operatives. This made him a force multiplier. Each person he instructed represented an exponential increase in the threat against Israeli interests. The ability to disseminate such highly dangerous technical skills made him a singularly high-priority target for Mossad, Israel's national intelligence agency. To comprehend the full gravity of Hamshari's position on Israel's clandestine target list, it is imperative to rewind to the autumn of 1972. On September 5th, during the Munich Olympic Games, a Palestinian militant group known as Black September, a faction of the PLO, breached the Olympic Village. 11 Israeli Olympic team members were taken hostage. The crisis escalated into a tragic massacre that left all 11 dead, alongside a West German police officer. The event sent shockwaves across the globe, fundamentally altering Israel's perception of external threats. The clear and undeniable conclusion drawn in Tel Aviv was that Palestinian militant groups were expanding their operational footprint onto European soil, transforming cities like Paris, Rome, and Athens into undeclared battlegrounds veiled by apparent normalcy. The international community, while condemning the act, was perceived by Israel as largely ineffective in preventing future atrocities. The direct and immediate response from the Israeli government was the initiation of Operation Wrath of God, a campaign that would define a decade of covert warfare. This was a systematic, covert campaign of targeted assassinations designed to eliminate those identified as the architects and facilitators of terrorism against Israel. The directive came directly from the highest echelons of power. Golda Meir, then 76 years old and serving as Israel's prime minister, held the ultimate authority for approving each mission. Her resolve, shaped by the raw grief and strategic implications of Munich, was unwavering. The phrase, "never again," often spoken in hushed tones regarding the Holocaust, took on a new operational meaning in her policy. Meir oversaw a determined shift in policy, moving from a defensive posture to a proactive, offensive intelligence strategy. Her cabinet meetings during this period were tense, often fraught with moral and ethical dilemmas. Yet the consensus was clear. Israel would not passively endure further attacks. Official records and later declassified accounts suggest Meir took a deeply personal responsibility for these decisions, viewing them as essential for national survival. Working directly under Meir's mandate was Zvi Zamir, the 51-year-old director of Mossad. Zamir was responsible for the intricate coordination and oversight of Operation Wrath of God. His office became the nerve center for intelligence gathering, planning, and execution of these highly sensitive missions across international borders. The campaign against Hamshari was not an isolated act, but a component of this broader, meticulously orchestrated strategy. The operational philosophy of Wrath of God emphasized precision, deniability, and relentless pursuit. Targets were selected after extensive intelligence validation, often involving multiple sources to confirm identity, location, and operational significance. Hamshari's dossier, compiled over months, if not years, included reports from human sources embedded within PLO networks in Beirut and Europe, as well as intercepted communications. These reports consistently highlighted his growing influence within the PLO's operational command structure, confirming his role not just as a bomb maker, but as an indispensable technical and training asset. The decision to target Hamshari was neither impulsive nor lightly undertaken. It was the product of extensive intelligence assessments weighing the strategic importance of neutralizing such a critical technical figure against the inherent operational risks of conducting such an action in a sovereign nation like Greece. The geopolitical landscape of 1974 Europe was complex. Athens, in particular, had emerged as a key transit hub for Palestinian operatives. Its geographical position, straddling the Middle East and Western Europe, made it a convenient waypoint. The city's relatively lenient airport and port security, combined with established Arab communities, provided a degree of anonymity and operational latitude for various groups. For Mossad, this presented both opportunity and significant challenge. While surveillance could be established with reduced risk of immediate detection within these environments, the window for direct action would be narrow, and any exposure could trigger a diplomatic incident of considerable magnitude, potentially complicating Israel's already delicate international relations. The Greek government, striving to maintain a delicate balance between Arab nations and Western powers, would have vehemently opposed any overt foreign intelligence operations on its soil. This added an immense layer of pressure on Mossad to ensure absolute discretion and deniability. The gravity of the mission was understood by all involved. Hamshari was not merely an individual, but a critical node in a network of destruction, and his neutralization was paramount to disrupting the PLO's evolving capabilities and sending a clear, chilling message to its leadership. The decision to target Mahmoud Hamshari was not made in a vacuum. It was the culmination of a protracted and meticulous intelligence operation that spanned several months and multiple continents. From the strategic command centers in Tel Aviv, Mossad had been building a comprehensive profile of Hamshari, piece by painstaking piece, long before his fateful arrival in Athens. The bedrock of this intelligence effort lay in a combination of human intelligence, HUMINT, and signals intelligence, SIGINT. Sources cultivated within Beirut, a known hub for Palestinian groups, provided crucial insights into Hamshari's activities. These were not always direct agents. Sometimes they were sympathetic contacts within the broader Arab community, disgruntled individuals, or even opportunists who, for a price or out of ideological conviction, fed information to Mossad's clandestine networks. These human assets reported on Hamshari's frequent meetings with high-ranking PLO officials, his visits to specific, unassuming workshops, and the movements of known trainees. They painted a picture of a man who operated with quiet efficiency, rarely drawing attention to himself, yet whose influence within the PLO's technical wing was undeniable. Parallel to this, sophisticated electronic surveillance systems intercepted communications. While the technology of 1974 was rudimentary by modern standards, Mossad possessed advanced capabilities for the era. Telecommunications, particularly those routed through less secure international exchanges, were vulnerable. Decrypted messages and voice traffic revealed Hamshari's codenames, confirmed his operational tasks, and often detailed the technical specifications of the explosive devices he was designing or teaching others to construct. Crucially, these intercepts underscored his role not just as a fabricator, but as a critical instructor, someone whose specialized knowledge was being disseminated throughout the PLO's operational cadres. The intelligence confirmed that Hamshari was not merely replaceable. His unique combination of innovation and pedagogical skill made him a force multiplier for the PLO, a linchpin in their evolving terror infrastructure. The overwhelming intelligence pointed to one conclusion: Hamshari represented a threat that could not be ignored. The operational challenge then shifted to where and how to neutralize him. Athens, Greece, emerged as the most viable, albeit complex, location. The discussions within Mossad headquarters, often involving Zvi Zamir and his senior advisors, were rigorous. Greece presented significant diplomatic hurdles. The Greek government maintained a delicate neutrality in the Arab-Israeli conflict, and covert operations on its soil carried the substantial risk of a major international incident should they be exposed. Israel had no formal intelligence-sharing agreements or particularly warm relations with Athens, meaning that any operation would be conducted without local governmental cooperation, increasing the potential for political fallout. However, Athens also offered compelling logistical opportunities. In the early 1970s, it had become an undeniable hub for Palestinian transit. Its geographical location, bridging the Middle East and Western Europe, made it a natural crossroads for operatives moving between training camps in Lebanon and Syria and targets in Paris, Rome, or London. Airport and port security were, by contemporary standards, relatively lax compared to more alert Western nations. The city also hosted established Arab communities, providing a plausible cover for operatives and offering a degree of anonymity within the bustling urban environment. After meticulous analysis, the decision was made. The strategic imperative to neutralize Hamshari outweighed the diplomatic risks inherent in operating in Greece, provided the operation could be executed with absolute precision and deniability. The window of opportunity would be narrow, demanding swift surgical action. With the target confirmed and the operational theater selected, the command of the field execution fell to Mike Harari, a 45-year-old veteran operative of Mossad. Harari was a legendary figure within the agency, known for his cold pragmatism, meticulous planning, and an uncanny ability to oversee high-stakes elimination operations without leaving a trace. He had commanded numerous successful missions under Operation Wrath of God, earning a fearsome reputation for efficiency and discretion. Harari was not one for grand gestures. His style was precise, invisible, and utterly ruthless. Under Harari's direct supervision, a small, highly specialized team of operatives was infiltrated into Athens days before Hamshari's anticipated arrival. These agents were not soldiers in uniform, but masters of urban camouflage, deeply trained in blending into any environment. They arrived separately over several days, using meticulously forged travel documents and fabricated cover stories, some posing as tourists, others as businessmen on fleeting trips, and still others as students or academics. Their ingress was designed to be as unremarkable as possible, scattering their arrival points and methods to avoid any pattern that might arouse suspicion from local authorities. Among this team was Agent Operative A, a 35-year-old surveillance specialist whose primary role was to establish and maintain eyes on the target. Once in Athens, the team quickly set up a network of safe houses and observation posts. Their first critical task began the moment Hamshari landed at Athens International Airport. Through prior intelligence on his flight details, Agent A and other members of the surveillance team were strategically positioned. They tracked Hamshari discreetly from his disembarkation through customs, where his unassuming suitcase passed without incident, and as he made his way into the city. He settled into a modest hotel in the city center, a choice that further reinforced his carefully cultivated image as an ordinary businessman rather than a high-value target. The surveillance then became a painstaking exercise in patience and observation. Over the next few days, the operatives mapped Hamshari's routine. They documented his movements from his hotel to local cafes, his seemingly casual strolls through public squares, and any meetings he might have held. Every interaction, every public phone call, every purchase was noted. The objective was not just to confirm his identity, which had already been done, but to identify any patterns, potential vulnerabilities, or unexpected security measures he might employ. What they observed reinforced the intelligence profile. Hamshari appeared relaxed, confident, and largely oblivious to the invisible net closing around him. He showed no outward signs of personal security concerns, moving about Athens with the ease of someone who believed himself beyond reach. The crucial piece of intelligence that solidified the operational plan came from a combination of continued electronic intercepts and direct observation. Hamshari possessed a ferry ticket for a crossing from Piraeus, Athens's main port, to Limassol, Cyprus. This confirmed his intended departure and provided the operational team with a precise timeline and location. The port of Piraeus, a bustling hub of maritime traffic, was now unequivocally designated as the stage for the operation. The environment of a busy port, with its thousands of passengers and complex infrastructure, offered both chaotic anonymity and distinct choke points. Harari and his team began to meticulously analyze the port's layout, identifying potential approach routes, choke points for interception, and critically, exfiltration pathways for the operatives. The clock was now ticking. The morning of Mahmud Hamshari's departure dawned clear and bright over Athens, July 1974, a stark contrast to the shadowy machinations unfolding around him. He rose early from his modest hotel room, performed his morning ablutions, and dressed without haste. His final check of his belongings was perfunctory. A small, unassuming travel bag contained only essentials, reinforcing the facade of a simple businessman on a routine trip. There was no visible tension in his demeanor, no nervous glances over his shoulder. He carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man secure in his anonymity, a confidence that, unknown to him, was utterly misplaced. As Hamshari exited the hotel, his figure was immediately picked up by the Mossad surveillance team. Agent Operative A, positioned discreetly within a parked vehicle across the street, adjusted a camera lens, capturing Hamshari's relaxed stride. From this vantage point and others dotted along the route, every step Hamshari took was being transmitted in real time to a central command post established in a nondescript apartment overlooking the bustling thoroughfare leading to Piraeus. Mike Harari, the field commander, was there, receiving a constant stream of updates, mapping Hamshari's trajectory and refining the execution plan with surgical precision. The atmosphere in the command post was one of tightly coiled tension, a silence broken only by clipped radio communications and the soft click of monitoring equipment. Hamshari hailed a taxi, instructing the driver to take him to the port of Piraeus. The journey was uneventful, a blur of Athenian street life. He arrived at the sprawling port complex, a cacophony of shouting vendors, ferry horns, and the general clamor of hundreds of passengers preparing to embark on various journeys across the Aegean. For Hamshari, it was merely a transit point, a gateway to Limassol, Cyprus, where new clandestine meetings and operations awaited. For the Mossad, it was the meticulously selected stage for a lethal drama. The port terminal itself was a maze of bustling corridors and open waiting areas. Hamshari moved through the initial check-in area, his suitcase passing through a cursory inspection, a procedure of mere formality that year, lacking the advanced screening technologies common today. Nothing suspicious was found as expected. Hamshari's true tools of trade were not carried in luggage but in his intellect and expertise. He was merely carrying a small hand-carry bag, further underscoring his casual demeanor. The surveillance team, comprised of agents expertly blending into the crowds as tourists and locals, maintained visual contact. They guided the operational team, using pre-arranged code words and subtle hand signals, towards a specific choke point. This was a corridor that had been identified during prior reconnaissance as the blind spot, a relatively isolated stretch of walkway between the main check-in area and the actual boarding gates. Here, the dense flow of passengers temporarily thinned, creating a brief, fleeting moment of reduced visibility and activity. This was where the window of opportunity would open. Any hesitation, any missed cue, and Hamshari would be on board the ferry, making the operation exponentially more difficult, if not impossible, to execute without unacceptable collateral risk. Hamshari entered the designated corridor, his pace unhurried. He glanced at his ticket, then ahead at the boarding gate. A faint, almost imperceptible sense of anticipation perhaps crossing his features. He was completely relaxed, his guard down, utterly unaware of the danger that was now mere feet away. This false sense of security, meticulously cultivated by the absence of any prior threats or surveillance, was his ultimate vulnerability. From the periphery, two operatives began to converge. These were not agents armed with firearms, but individuals trained in an even more discreet form of elimination. Among them was Agent Operative B, a 32-year-old specialist whose demeanor was as unremarkable as his attire. He moved with a practiced fluidity, his eyes scanning the crowd, not for threats, but for the optimal vector. Dressed in light, civilian clothing, perhaps a tourist's shirt and trousers, carrying a small satchel, they appeared to be nothing more than other passengers hurrying to their respective ferries. Their movements were synchronized, almost balletic in their precision, designed to be utterly unnoticeable to a casual observer. As Hamshari reached the midpoint of the corridor, Agent B initiated the critical phase. With a timing perfected through countless rehearsals, he approached Hamshari from a slight angle. The contact was swift, almost imperceptible, a seemingly accidental bump of shoulders, a momentary loss of balance in the bustling environment. In that fraction of a second, as their bodies brushed, Agent B administered a substance. It was not a weapon that fired a projectile, but a sophisticated delivery mechanism, perhaps a modified syringe or a device disguised as a pen, capable of injecting a potent dose of liquid into Hamshari's arm or back through his light clothing. The action was so subtle that neither Hamshari nor any nearby passenger registered it as anything more than a common inconvenience in a crowded space. Agent B, having completed his task, simply continued his trajectory, vanishing back into the flow of passengers, his expression unreadable. His companion provided immediate, silent cover, ensuring no one saw what truly transpired. The substance used was a classified compound, developed by Israeli intelligence in collaboration with specialists in toxicology and pharmacology. It was specifically engineered to induce a progressive cardiac failure that could be easily mistaken for a natural medical event. Unlike dramatic, fast-acting poisons that caused immediate convulsions or overt symptoms, this compound was designed for delayed, insidious action. It began to subtly disrupt the heart's electrical impulses, leading to arrhythmia and eventually complete cardiac arrest. The effects were designed to be gradual, mimicking the onset of a heart attack or stroke, particularly in a man of middle age who might be experiencing stress from travel. Hamshari continued walking for only a few more meters. The initial effects were insidious, a vague sense of unease, a slight dizziness. Then a more distinct pressure in his chest, a subtle shortness of breath. He stumbled, his hand instinctively going to his chest, his brow furrowed in confusion rather than alarm. The bustling noise of the port suddenly seemed distant, muted. He tried to take another step, but his legs failed him. The pain in his chest intensified sharply, a vice-like grip that stole his breath. He lurched forward, collapsing suddenly and ungracefully to the polished floor of the terminal, his small carry-on bag clattering beside him. The sudden collapse of a passenger drew immediate attention. Other travelers, startled, paused. Then, several individuals, prompted by instinct, rushed to his aid. Port employees, trained in basic first aid, were quickly on the scene, attempting to revive him. A chorus of shouts for a doctor and an ambulance filled the air, cutting through the general hubbub of the port. The confusion was widespread, a genuine human response to an unexpected medical emergency. However, despite the frantic efforts, the progressive failure of Hamshari's heart was irreversible. By the time paramedics arrived, pushing through the gathering crowd, Mahmoud Hamshari, the skilled engineer, the key PLO operative, was already dead. He had been neutralized, quietly, discreetly, just a few yards shy of the ferry that would have carried him to Cyprus. The operation was complete. With the sudden collapse of Mahmoud Hamshari in the bustling terminal of Piraeus, the immediate phase of the operation concluded, but its ramifications were only just beginning. For the Mossad team, the execution was merely one part of a meticulously planned mission. The next crucial phase was exfiltration, vanishing without a trace. The operatives, including Agent Operative B, who had administered the fatal substance, dissolved into the moving tapestry of the port. Their identities were built on layers of fabrication: false passports, pre-booked tickets for different destinations, and carefully constructed cover stories. Agent B, having completed his task, simply continued walking towards a different boarding gate, his pace unhurried, his face betraying no emotion. He and his companion, Agent Operative A, and the rest of the surveillance and support team did not leave Greece together. Instead, they dispersed, utilizing a variety of prearranged exfiltration routes. Some boarded ferries to nearby islands, others took flights to different European cities, carefully chosen for their lax security or as transit points to further destinations. Within hours they were beyond Greek borders, their temporary personas discarded, their movements meticulously designed to erase any connection to the events at Piraeus. Their safe houses were swept clean, leased vehicles returned, and all communication devices secured or destroyed. The operational success hinged not just on the elimination of the target, but on the absolute deniability of the state that ordered it. Back in the terminal, the scene was one of contained chaos. Hamshari's body was quickly transported to a local hospital for an autopsy. The initial medical examination, conducted without specific instructions to look for signs of poisoning, found no obvious external trauma or suspicious marks. Given the acute cardiac symptoms and Hamshari's age, the preliminary cause of death was officially attributed to a sudden, fatal heart attack. A plausible explanation for a man in his early 40s traveling under stress. The advanced nature of the substance employed by Mossad was a key factor here. It was designed precisely to mimic natural physiological failure, making detection incredibly difficult without specialized toxicological analysis that was not standard procedure in such cases in 1974. However, the official verdict did little to quell the brewing suspicions within the Palestine Liberation Organization. News of Hamshari's sudden death reached the PLO leadership swiftly, disseminating through their clandestine networks. For figures like Yasser Arafat, 45, the charismatic and enduring leader of the PLO, and Abu Iyad, Salah Khalaf, 42, the shrewd head of PLO intelligence and a key figure in Black September, the news was received with a profound sense of foreboding. They knew Hamshari. They knew his value, his skills, and the fact that he was a key figure in their technical infrastructure. His death, so sudden and seemingly natural, was immediately perceived as anything but. Inside the hushed, secure meeting rooms in Beirut and Damascus, Arafat and Abu Iyad convened their inner circle. The discussions were terse, filled with unstated accusations. They had ample historical context to draw upon. The systematic targeting of PLO operatives under Operation Wrath of God had been ongoing since Munich. Other key figures, such as Wales-Wider in Rome and Mahmoud Salameh in Paris, had been eliminated in similarly precise, often unconventional ways. The sudden demise of Hamshari, a man who possessed such critical, specialized knowledge in explosives and training, fit a chilling pattern. "It is the hand of Israel," Abu Iyad was reported to have stated in internal communications, echoing the sentiments of many within the PLO leadership. Yet, what made Hamshari's death particularly potent was the maddening absence of concrete proof. There were no bullet casings, no bomb fragments, no clear signs of a struggle. Without tangible evidence to present to the world, the PLO could issue fiery condemnations and mourn their fallen comrade. But they could not definitively accuse Israel in a way that would force international action. This absence of evidence created a specific and insidious form of psychological terror. It fostered an intense paranoia within the ranks. If Israel could strike so silently, so invisibly, transforming a bustling port into a silent kill zone, then no one was truly safe. Every encounter, every seemingly accidental bump in a crowd, every unusual symptom could now be seen through a lens of suspicion. This forced the PLO to fundamentally rethink how they protected their most valuable assets, demanding tighter security protocols, more rigorous vetting of travel routes, and an increased awareness of their surroundings, measures that inevitably hindered operational efficiency and bred distrust. The reaction from the Greek authorities was a study in diplomatic embarrassment and calculated ambiguity. While the official autopsy report cited natural causes, privately, officials within the Greek intelligence and police services harbored deep suspicions. The sudden death of a known Palestinian figure, especially one with a travel itinerary to Cyprus, an island often associated with clandestine activities, raised red flags. However, Greece was walking a diplomatic tightrope. Overtly accusing Israel of an assassination on its soil would have provoked a severe crisis, potentially jeopardizing relations with a powerful state and inviting retaliation from Arab nations who might view Greece as complicit. Conversely, ignoring the matter entirely would anger Arab states and invite further covert operations. Consequently, a discreet investigation was initiated, characterized more by its lack of urgency than its thoroughness. Documents were reviewed, witnesses briefly interviewed, but without any genuine impetus or forensic evidence pointing to foul play, the investigation eventually languished. It was quietly archived, marked inconclusive, a convenient diplomatic fiction that allowed all parties to avoid escalation. Athens chose the path of least resistance, preferring the ambiguity to the perilous clarity of confrontation. The strategic impact of Hamshari's elimination transcended the physical removal of an individual. His death undoubtedly created an immediate, tangible gap in the PLO's technical infrastructure. The specialized knowledge he possessed in designing sophisticated explosive mechanisms and his unique capacity to train others were not easily replaced. For a time, the pace and sophistication of certain PLO operations were indeed disrupted. But from a broader, long-term perspective, the question of effectiveness becomes more complex, stirring debates that continue to this day regarding the legitimacy and utility of targeted assassinations. While tactical objectives were achieved, the target neutralized, operatives exfiltrated, attribution successfully obscured, the underlying cause that fueled the Palestinian movement remained. The PLO, a resilient organization, adapted. Other engineers eventually stepped into Hamshari's role, new methods were developed, and the attacks against Israel, while perhaps momentarily stalled in certain areas, continued. The cycle of violence, far from being broken, often intensified. Each elimination created a new martyr, strengthening narratives of resistance and motivating fresh recruits driven by vengeance. This operation also brought into sharp relief the profound ethical dimensions inherent in targeted killings. Such operations occur outside the traditional legal framework, without trial, without possibility of defense, and are executed based on intelligence assessments that, no matter how rigorous, are not subjected to public scrutiny. The argument of national defense and prevention of future attacks confronts fundamental principles of due process, international law, and the sovereignty of nations where these operations take place. Greece never authorized an Israeli operation on its territory, yet it became the unwitting stage for an extrajudicial execution. Decades later, the death of Mahmoud Hamshari in Piraeus remains a stark case study in the capabilities and contradictions of offensive intelligence operations. Israel undeniably projected its power, sending an unequivocal message that it would track and reach those it deemed existential threats, regardless of international borders or diplomatic conventions. It was a potent demonstration of Mossad's reach and resolve. Yet the broader conflict persisted. Hamshari was one among many who perished in this invisible war, but his elimination perfectly illustrates the logic, the methods, and the enduring ethical dilemmas of shadow warfare that defined that era and continue to shape modern conflicts, fought in silence and secrecy, just beneath the surface of apparent normalcy. As the Athens sun set on July 1974, painting the Aegean sky with hues of twilight, the unassuming figure of Mahmoud Hamshari lay still on the cold port floor. His journey to Cyprus was abruptly ended, a meticulously orchestrated conclusion to a life lived in the shadows. The agents responsible for this silent act of elimination had already melted into the European landscape, their mission complete, their presence erased, leaving behind only the official narrative of a sudden, tragic heart attack. Yet, in the clandestine circles of the PLO, the truth, or at least a chilling approximation of it, resonated, fostering a profound and unsettling paranoia. This clandestine act, born from the bitter aftermath of Munich, exemplifies a chilling truth about the enduring conflicts of our age, that in the relentless pursuit of security, the lines between justice and retribution often blur into an ambiguous gray. It speaks to a protracted, invisible war waged in the unseen corners of the world, where international borders are merely suggestions, and the battlefield is often a mundane street, a bustling airport, or a crowded port. This operation, like countless others, reveals the fragile illusion of peace and the enduring paradox of eliminating a single individual in a conflict fought by many. It raises the profound question of whether such surgical strikes truly halt the tide of violence or merely reshape its currents, perpetuating a cycle of fear and reprisal that echoes through generations. The phantom war against unseen enemies, where every ordinary citizen might unknowingly cross paths with agents of destiny, continues to cast its long shadow. Considering the long-term consequences and the complex ethical dilemmas inherent in such covert operations, do you believe the strategic gains achieved through the elimination of Mahmoud Hamshari justified the methods employed? Share your thoughts and perspectives in the comments below. If the intricate dance of intelligence and counterintelligence captivates your interest, explore another chapter from the annals of covert history in our next investigation into Operation Phoenix Rising. Ensure you don't miss future dives into the dark archives of history. Like this video, subscribe to Black Protocol, and activate the notification bell for more untold stories from the shadows.